Okay, so it's hard to believe this is our 5th week already. It's pretty amazing. Time flies like that. Can you imagine 5 weeks we've been coming back here every Sunday night to prepare ourselves a little bit, Be'ezras Hashem, for Chanukah. We've covered a lot of ground, and a lot of people have been following along, hundreds of people online as well, all around the world. Reb Edgar even bumped into somebody, right, at the Kotel who thought he had to inform Edgar about this shiur in London, and he arranged. So shout out to that Yid from Tom's River, right, in New Jersey. So amazing. Okay, so we are currently, I believe, on the last page before it says number 4. So it's 3 pages in, and you can open it up. You should see on the left-hand side it says 4, Hilchos Hashkamas HaBoker Daled, and we're going to finish up the piece now, where we were referring to last time the 36 candles, that if a person counts up all of the candles, the neiros that are lit throughout Chanukah, leaving out the shamish, so cumulatively through the tradition of Beis Hillel, which we're going to learn a lot about Be'ezras Hashem tonight, and next week, of Moisif V'Hoilech, where the first night you're lighting 1 candle, and then all the subsequent nights you're adding another one. So if you add up all the candles after Chanukah, or Zos Chanukah, you have lit 36 candles. And we spoke very deeply about what this idea is, 36. 36 were the hours of the Ar HaGanos, that hidden light that was shining in the world. We spoke about 36 hidden tzaddikim, right? And the tzaddikim that are in every generation. And so Reb Nassan points out that there's something particularly reasonable in understanding the connection between the 36 candles of Chanukah and the 36 hidden tzaddikim, now that we've spent so much time talking about how the light of the menorah is, in a certain sense, the light of the tzaddik, who is, in a certain sense, throughout exile, what the Beis HaMikdash was for us in a time of Geula. When we were in Eretz Yisrael, we had the Beis HaMikdash. Wasn't just a cultural center, wasn't even just a religious center, but religion has a soul, and the soul of religion is faith. And the soul of faith is prophecy. Remember, we spent the first couple of weeks speaking about a koyach hamadame, going back to that pasuk in Tehillim, derech emuna bacharti, that we have the capacity to choose a life of faith, and it all depends on the narratives that we use to approach the world. And this is something that a person can work on. It's a muscle that a person can exercise, to choose to see the world as a meaningful place, to choose to see the world as having been created, and having been created consciously and consciously sustained, recreated each and every second for us, for you and I, for the purpose of eventually bringing the whole entire world to this elevated state of consciousness, Umala ha'aretz deas Hashem kamayim li'amachasim, as the psukim describe, a whole world that's saturated with the knowledge of Hashem. You see, Hashem is preparing the whole world for the Geula. We were just talking, my wife and I, a little bit earlier about the chain of events since October 7th. I mean, it's what's going on in the world is not to be believed. You see the dominoes falling bit by bit by bit by bit. It's not quite where we'd like it. Like everybody's speaking about the situation in Syria. I think they had a little bit of an interview with Ben Gavir, the Knesset member. And he said this one, talking about Assad, he said zu nevela, like this one was an nevela, but the rebels are treifa. It's like, meaning it's not as if like we're not super thrilled about anything yet, but you see the world is in motion. The world is in motion, and who knows what the end will be? I know what the end will be. We know what the end will be. B'yomahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmai echad. And all of this is the world getting ready. So it's an incredible time to be alive. What's happening geopolitically, what's happening in technologically, what's happening spiritually. It's an amazing time to be alive, and we should be awake to it and realize like these are not simple times. These are really not simple times. The world is shaking. Mom is shaking. So says Reb Nassan, if that's the light of the menorah, which is the light of the tzaddikim, that Reb Nassan saw the tzaddikim connected to light in the pasuk that we say Friday night, Or Zerua La Tzaddik, right? And in Shabbos day, there's a light that's sown, that's planted for the tzaddikim. There's a connection between the tzaddik and light. Memela, the light of the menorah, which was literally the light of the Beis HaMikdash, that the windows, right, of the Beis HaMikdash, like we said, were constructed in such a way to allow the light of the menorah out to the world, which was the light of faith, right? That's what the light of the menorah represented, the essence of the Beis HaMikdash. If that's what the tzaddik is, so then, of course, there's going to be 36 candles all throughout Chanukah, reflecting the light of the 36 hidden tzaddikim, of whom all other tzaddikim are just derivatives. They're the core. This idea of the 36 tzaddikim, going back to the 36 hours of the Ar HaGanos, which essentially is the light that's hidden. Meaning, it's a light that it's up to us to choose to interpret the world in such a way that we can unearth that light. That's the light of faith. That's the Ar HaGanos. That's up to us in our own lives to find a way to reveal this light that's hidden, to bring it out into the surface through our choosing to approach the world with eyes of emunah, with eyes of prophecy. Be'ezras Hashem. Last week, just the very last point that we learned before we're going to carry on now, when there's a lot to get to, mamash, just a few weeks left, still a lot to get to, which we'll do our best, and we'll go as fast as we can. So we learned that Reb Nosson connected yet another concept of this correlation between the light of the Beis HaMikdash and the Ar Zaru Ala Tzaddik and the 36 flames, the 36 tzaddikim, by talking about the symbol of the ner itself. And Reb Nosson pointed out, based on the Gemara Pesachim, what does one do with a ner, with a candle? We search with a candle. A ner is for chipos, right? Like the pasuk says, ner Elokim, or ner Hashem nishmas Adam. Or somebody's at the doors. Ner Hashem nishmas Adam, choifes kol chadrei batan. It seeks out all the hidden spaces. You see the connection between seeking and the candle. Of course, that's why the Gemara Pesachim is telling us we use the candle to search for the chametz, b'dikas chametz. We don't use a torch. We don't use a lantern. Dafka, a candle, because a candle is what you use to search. What does that have to do with Rav Nosson's drawing a connection between the 36 hidden tzaddikim and the 36 flames of Chanukah? Very much, because you have to search for the tzaddik, right? And we spent a long time last week speaking about this idea of being a seeker, of being a person that sees the tzaddik not as just a communal association or affiliation where a person belongs to this particular community that's led by a tzaddik and they think that that's enough, right? But to be a person that, irrespective of whether you already have a tzaddik, right, or you're still searching, you always have to be searching. Because the tzaddik's whole light is to get a person to seek and to search and never, ever, ever to give up on this incredible, epic journey to deeper levels of connection. No matter what a person's circumstances, no matter what a person's stuck in, no matter what a person's dealing with, that's what the light of the tzaddikim is, that they gave us the capacity to believe that there's more to our experience than meets the eye. That's the Ar Haganas, right? That's what's hidden, waiting for us to tap into it. And it sounds very poetic and nice on paper. It doesn't look nice in life. Life is very muddy, very, very muddy and dirty and difficult, challenging. You know, and sometimes when we go through moments like that, those are moments that if we learned this stuff improperly, we think that these teachings apply least. And the second we hit a couple of bumps, it's like, oh, this stuff is not relevant. And we don't realize. Again, when it's very nice in black and white, and some letters are bolded, and some are in italics, and everything is set up nicely, it's very beautiful to learn. These teachings are meant to be applied in the darkest of the dark moments, including everything that a person's going through. That's when you need the tzaddik. Now that's not when you forsake the tzaddik, right? That's when the tzaddik and his teachings are actually the most relevant. But a person has to believe in them. A person has to believe in them. When Rabbi Nachman said "Ein shem yush b'olam klal," he wasn't speaking about stubbing your toe in the middle of the night and you'll carry on and you'll still get back to sleep. You understand? This was a person who suffered. He lost 4 children in his life. He lost his first wife. He was persecuted his whole short life. He suffered from tuberculosis for almost a third of his life, which was very short because he died at 39 years old. This was a person who knew what darkness looked like in ways that, Be'ezras Hashem, none of us will even understand an iota of, whatever we're going through, and not to invalidate anything that any of us are struggling with. When he said Ein Shem Yush, he meant it. He meant it. He meant no matter what. And that's the Ar Haganas, that's the light of the tzaddikim, and that's where we left off last week. So if you look on this page, I don't know how to call it because it doesn't have numbers on it, but the page before the next section of Likutei Halachos that we're going to be looking at, and take a look at the bottom, the second to the bottom paragraph. It begins with V'zeh b'chinas ner Chanukah. So says Reb Nosson, he adds another element. Now that we're making all of these connections, and we've spoken about faith and lechem and chalom, right, from the Ishbitzer that we started in the beginning, you can interpret the world. The world is a dream. It'll become what you make of it, right, and what you approach it as being. That's what it will be for you. Says Reb Nosson, good. Now this illuminates another facet of the halachos of Chanukah. V'zeh b'chinas, now this enables us to understand the aspect of ner Chanukah asur l'shtamish la'ira. You cannot use the light. Sha'asur l'skarav la'tzadik b'shvil shimushei chol kanog achshav b'arvaneseinu arabim. Says Reb Nosson, these two things are correlates. To the extent that people stop seeking the tzaddik and they think, nope, I belong to this particular chasidus. says Rabbi Nosson, hand in hand with a feeling that you no longer need to seek the tzaddik because his picture is on my wall, for example, often goes along with a very shallow connection to the tzaddik, where people will consider themselves chasidim of a particular tzaddik and utilize that connection for the purpose of asking for business advice, just for example, or if there's a big crisis, or if there's a big crisis in the family, go for a bracha. And that's the extent of a person's relationship with a tzaddik. Now, when you reinterpret the word tzaddik, then instead of meaning what it means today colloquially and culturally, you understand it in the way that it was always meant to be understood, which is a spiritual master. It's much easier sometimes when you put on the lenses of other traditions, you think of like a guru, right? So, but a guru can also have very egotistical connotations, right? Guru is not the best thing, so they didn't mean to be gurus. But they did mean to be spiritual masters or soul doctors. And so you say, okay, soul doctor, business advice. Something's missing. Like somewhere along the way, the message was relayed improperly, right? Because that means that we don't understand what a tzaddik's supposed to be. And so it says Rav Nosson, in correlation to a person's stopping to seek the tzaddik, to be mechapes b'neiros. So says Rav Nosson, well, if you could light the Chanukah menorah, which is the Ar HaGanos, with a torch, then you can use the Chanukah menorah, because meaning you have no chipus, and you have the Ar of the tzaddik, so you may as well use it for your own purposes, and for politics, and for this, and for that, and pettiness. But says Rav Nosson, in as much as your connection to the light of the tzaddik, which is dancing on your menorah, is one of neiros, or you light it with a ner, which is a chipus, you're a person who's seeking Hashem, and you seek Hashem through the guidance of the tzaddik, and that's what a rebbe is for. That's what a tzaddik is for. Can you heal my soul? Can you cleanse me a little bit? Can my relationship with you turn me into a little bit of a better person, a better human being, a person who's closer to Hashem, a person who looks at the world through the eyes of faith? Says Rav Nosson, Memela, such a person doesn't use the tzaddik. Such a person recognizes you don't come to the tzaddik for business, you don't come to the tzaddik for anything having to do with the olam hazeh. You come to the tzaddik as a soul, not as a body. You leave all the rest of the stuff behind. And that was Rabbi Nachman, who was super makbid in his chasidim. He did not allow them to discuss anything that wasn't exactly seen through the lens of Avodas Hashem. He saw himself as there to give people paths to enable them to come closer to Hashem, tikkunim for the neshama. That's what he was there for. You know, and that was, he was very strong on that. So that's sort of being echoed here in his Talmud, Rav Nosson, where he makes a connection between the seeking spirit with this, that we're not allowed to use the Chanukah candles. Because that's the light of the tzaddik. You don't use the light of the tzaddik. Ein lana rishus leishtamish b'hem, ela l'ra'osam bilvad. V'hayu einecha ro'os esmeirecha. Right? It's the same thing. Your eyes are meant to be looking at the tzaddik. And in this context, the tzaddik is there to help fix your eyes. Right? Ela l'ra'osam bilvad. And you can interpret it to say, what's the tzaddik there for? Not to be used, but to enable a person to upgrade their re'iyah, to upgrade their lenses, to upgrade their narratives, to upgrade their perspectives on life, so that they have any chance of revealing the Ar HaGanos, which shone for 36 hours and is reflected in the lives of the 36 central tzaddikim, that are manifested in the Ar Zerul HaTzaddik, in our 36 neiros of Chanukah, which is the light of the Beis HaMikdash that Hashem gave us in Galus, that even though we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, which was the headquarters for faith in the realm of space, Olam, we have the light of the Beis HaMikdash in the headquarters in the realm of the soul, of the human soul, which is the tzaddik.
But don't you sometimes need to clear the gashmius in order to get to the ruchnius?
Yeah, as long as it's super clear that that's the main intention. So I don't, because so we have stories that people came to Rabbi Nachman about Nebuch. You know, people were ill or people had terrible things in their family. That's true. But there's a way. So he helped them. Of course, he helped them. Obviously. But the thing is that Rabbi Nachman wants you to come to him with your physical or let's say emotional or financial or other ailments seen through the lens of Avodas Hashem, though. Right? That obviously it must be, like we just had shiur this morning, there's a lack in the Shekhinah, right? Meaning something's not complete in my life, and that's what pains me. And the Rebbe would first, before doing anything, would point that out to you. You know, would help you to refocus. You're a soul, you're not a body, right? Your identity is not this particular person. You want to be in best position to serve Hashem. And unfortunately, if a person's struggling financially, there's a major obstacle to that. And so the main thing is to
at the end of the day.
Secondary. And to see it through the eyes of soul, through the eyes of emunah, that's what the tzaddik was there for. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
But the Balatanya Taka says, and in one of his many letters in the Tanya, he bemoans and he says, what is this that people come and they ask for physical advice and everything? He says, we never heard that people come to the prophet or to a tzaddik to ask for business. He says, that's not what I'm here for.
That's right.
He says it clearly, the Balatanya. And the second story, that when someone came and he said, I need. He says, you all I hear from you saying is what you need. What are you needed for? And it's at that point the chassid fainted. And that was his story. What are you needed?
It's like, and of course at that point the chassid passed out, and then, but that's what it is. That's what a tzaddik is there for. You know, Milanu Gadol from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. You know, Schusi Aganalin, and this was his whole thing. You came to him with your stuff, your petty little stuff, and he reminded you that you're a torchbearer for the divine. Like that's what a tzaddik is. So today, whatever, not saying anything bad or good, just every person has to reflect on the dynamics in certain segments of our society and wonder whether this is what the Baal Shem Tov intended. We have to bring back that original fire. Just going to make a bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh b'dvarei. I always say I wish all of my brachas would be recorded and posted on YouTube for hundreds of people to watch, and then I could pretend every time like I have kavanah when I make brachas. Amazing. Fine, so that's what he says. Of course, if you approach things with neiros, with a ner for chippos, like bedikas chametz, you're not going to be allowed to use that light. Like he points out, Rabbim, 3 generations after the Baal Shem Tov, the whole thing already was fallen. The whole thing was upside down. You're not going to use the tzaddik for your own purposes. He calls them shumushe chol, right? Like sort of mundane matters. Kanog achshav, like is common today. Bavaneseinu Rabbim. Rak ikar skarvus. The reason you look for a tzaddik is yibishvil Hashem yizbarach. It's for Hashem. Kediliskus lamuna shlema. Again, because you want to have that that light of being able to see the world as bursting with the presence of God. That's why you need a tzaddik, not for any other reason. And he finishes, V'alkein, therefore, Karim Parshas Vayihi Mekates B'Chanukah. That's why, and this is going to be the bridge for the next piece, with Hashem's help, this is why we always read Mekates. Well, it's either Mekates or Vayeshev, or the Psukim, right, the V'la'am in Parshas Vayeshev, that deal with who? With Yosef at Tzaddik. Ki Parshiyos Eilu Medaber Mi Yosef at Tzaddik, because the whole sugya of these Parshiyos, Vayeshev, parenthetically, is my bar mitzvah Parshas, so I feel very connected to this idea, is Yosef at Tzaddik. Shekol Gdulas Hayahaya. What was Yosef's big greatness? That Yosef is Yosef Hat Tzaddik more than anybody else. I don't call Moshe Hat Tzaddik or Avram Hat Tzaddik or anybody else. Yosef Hat Tzaddik rose to greatness. How? By interpreting dreams. Going back to the Ishbitzer, that's the essence of this whole Torah, right? Is that what it means to be a person who approaches the world through the lens of prophecy, is that this world is a dream and it's up to you to interpret it. That's how we began with. Remember the koyach hamedame, lechem, chaloim, that was the Ishbitzer. But going back to Rabbi Nachman, koyach hamedame, it was all about the medame. So how incredible is that all of these things coalesce in such a way where we're not running through all the symbols now again, but Arzurel tzaddik, the menorah, 36 tzaddik, and the candle for seeking the tzaddik, not allowed to use the tzaddik, it's only for spiritual matters. All of this is taking place when each of us are going to stand Be'ezus Hashem in a few weeks and light the menorah. That's what we're bringing into our lives. Says Reb Nassan, so of course you're going to be reading on Shabbos, Chanukah, about a tzaddik who rose to greatness by interpreting dreams. Because that's what it means to be a tzaddik, and that's what the light of the tzaddik is for you and me, is to train us how to interpret the dream of this world in such a way where we can recognize the all-pervasive presence of the infinite, of Hashem. Incredible. Mamish incredible. So he says that ki parshiyos elu medaber mi Yosef HaTzadik, these parshiyos are referring to Yosef. Shekol gedulasai alei pisrin chaloimes. His whole rise to greatness was through interpreting dreams. Ki HaTzadik ha'emes u'bechinas Yosef, shenikar tzadik yadua. The true tzadikim who were always persecuted, no matter who they were. We can speak about both Rabbi Nachman and the Baal Tanya and the Baal Shem Tov and the Ramchal and Rav Kook and anybody else, all throughout anybody who had something to say, they were roid of them, right? And it's not a new story. It goes back to Yosef and his brothers. There's a messianic redemptive soul, and there's always going to be pushback. always going to be pushed back, as we're going to learn in the next piece. Yosef is the tzaddik. All of his greatness was through the dreams that he interpreted. That he interpreted the dreams of, well, first the Sarim and then Parai. Like we said in the beginning of this whole thing, this whole journey now for 5 weeks, we began with that the whole thing of a dream is through the koach hamadame, right? This capacity we have of dimyon, of imagination, of interpretation. So the tzaddik has the spirit of prophecy, the ruach hanavua, the spirit of holiness. He has clarified his interpretation to such a degree that he'll approach the same circumstance someone else goes through and is completely different, full of light and full of Hashem's love and presence. The tzaddikim dream, and they dream true dreams. And they can interpret all dreams. Because they have a clarified function of imagination. When Parei saw that Yosef knew how to interpret dreams, Amar, is there anybody here who has the spirit of Elikim in him? Parei knew this, that Ruach Elikim Daika, we specifically refer to the Spirit of God, Bechinas Ruach HaNevuah, Ruach HaKodesh. That through this a person has the capacity to interpret the dream of this world. Lechem, chaloim, loichem, like what are you fighting for in this world, you know? Lochem, we're fighting to see the chalom in lechem. It's all the same letters, right? That's what it means to be a Jew. That's what it means to be a human, ultimately. So of course we're going to read these parashas on Chanukah, because like we've already discussed at great length, the whole thing of Chanukah really, which was instituted by the tzaddikim of that dar, which was Matasyahu, Kohen Gadol, right? And that whole cadre of tzaddikim then, who instituted for Dairei Chanukah because they knew that it was the end of the Beis Hamikdash. That was it. We were about to go into a 2,000-year exile. And they gave us, they are Zaru ala tzaddik. They planted light. Where? In the tzaddikim. That throughout all of history we've had tzaddikim who were the mini Beis Hamikdash, v'shachanti b'soicha lecha v'yachad, and they revealed the light of the menorah throughout our history, throughout our long and bitter exile. So that's what we do on Chanukah rather. Ki ikar bechinas ner Chanukah hu lahamshich ar tzaddik al ner Chanukah kidei shenizkal avakshay v'lamatzay. We're seeking the tzaddik, and we have this in mind when you light that flame and you're holding the candle. What are you about to do? You're seeking the light of the tzaddik. You're seeking it. It's an unbelievable thing. And then you bring the light of the tzaddik into your home, and it's not the light of the tzaddik. You understand the tzaddik, like we said, doesn't exist. The tzaddik is a portal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's the countenance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A very radical teaching of the Zohar Kadosh sees the extra word S in the context of Shalish or Galim, where it says Shalish pa'amim b'shana yira kol zechurcha es pnei adan Hashem. 3 times a year, every male, right, is expected to do aliyah l'regel to receive es pnei adan Hashem, that the face of the adan of the master, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, says the Zohar Kadosh, because every S is additive. Right? Additive. Every S is like a riboy. So what's it coming to include? Who dares interpret a word S in such close proximity to Adain Hashem? Es Pnei Adain Hashem. We're speaking about God. What could S include? Says the Zohar Kadosh, because Rabbi Shimon was such a boss. It was just, he knew what he was. He knew, like all the tzaddikim knew. He says S, this word S, with a dash, and it says Da. This is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That's what he says. About himself. Es Pnei Adan Hashem, Da Rajbi. This is Rabbi Shimon. The countenance of Hashem's presence, the face of Hashem. So how do you understand that? That's humility. This is like the most basic thing. Anybody who begins to discover Breslov, although it was true about the Vilna Gaon in the same measure, it was true about the Ramchal, it was true about all the tzaddikim, but Rabbi Nachman is very, 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 very expressive about his greatness. and about who he was. I mean, some of the statements that you discover in Chaim Aran, Ani ish pele v'nishmasi pele gadol, I'm a wondrous person, my soul is a wondrous person, chidish kamaini lo haya me'olam, there was never such a novelty as my soul, Ani nahar hametaher mikol aksamim, I'm a river that purifies from all stains. I can keep on going. So how are you to understand this? So first of all, many people only encounter this kind of rhetoric in a tzaddik when they discover Breslov, because Breslov is very low-hanging fruit, and a lot of people will encounter Breslov pamphlets and things, and they'll say, where does this come from? What they don't know is that this is an old tradition by these kinds of tzaddikim, and it starts with Rabbi Shimon. The whole Zohar Kodesh is filled with Rabbi Shimon praising himself. The Vilna Gaon writes about himself that he was Mashiach ben Yosef, right, or at least a nitzitz of Mashiach ben Yosef. All of these tzaddikim, the Ramchal, unbelievable. He was bringing down a new Zohar Kodesh, Tikkunim Chadashim. Unbelievable. If you read a little bit about what was going on with the circle of the Ramchal, the Ramat Valley, and others, they had this whole mystical group, the Ramchal.
And he passed away at 40.
Yes, also 39. He passed away at 39. Rabbi Nachman passed away at 39. The Arizal, people don't know this, passed away at 39 years old. These were young people. Amazing, right? You have a lot of work to do. It's like what they...
To that number, to the
there's got to be. And of course there's got to be a connection between these tzaddikim that this is...
He claimed that he had the neshama of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva missed the first 40 years of his life. And
he was mashlemit. Unbelievable, right? So I was reading it was actually a doctoral dissertation that somebody wrote on the Ramchal. Fascinating paper. And he writes over there, from sources that we're not likely to encounter in the standard sort of curriculum about the Baal Mesilas Yesharim, Derech Hashem, they don't tell you this stuff. But he was mamash trying to bring Mashiach, so much so that he saw himself and his small chabura of chevra that were around him in Italy, many of whom were connected to the University of Padua. They were doctors and then they were Kabbalists. It was incredible what was going on over there. Yeah, yes, Italian, mamish, yes, incredible people. Yes, that's true. That is true. So what he did was, he set this whole thing up as a schema, to reflect the dynamics of La'asid Lavai, of the Yemais HaMashiach. So he knew there was going to have to be an Eliyahu Navi, there was going to have to be a Mashiach ben Yosef, there was going to have to be a Mashiach ben David, there was going to have to be the Nishmas Moshe Rabbeinu, who was independent from this. And so he set up the inter-Chabura relationships. Yeah, he set up the inter-Chabura relationships in such a way where he associated different personalities with these personalities. See, he was going to be Mashiach. He was going to be Mashiach ben David. I believe Ramosha David Valley was going to be the Mashiach ben Yosef. There was somebody else, or Eliyahu, I think, who was Mashiach who was Eliyahu Navi.
So
another one was
assumed the.
They were going to be vessels for these spirit. Does that mean that they mamish believed that they were the Mashiach ben Yosef? In every generation, we have the capacity for these. These are eternal energies. The different people were either. Mamish, yes, they wanted to bring this reality into the world, but I'm saying this is an old tradition. Once a person understands that the role of the tzaddik is not about that particular individual and their leadership qualities or anything that they intend to do in this world for their own legacy or anything, they are here to reveal the presence of Hashem in the world, then in the name of humility, the only thing they can do is tell the truth. Because they understood that it wasn't them. They had a mission in this world. Rabbi Nachman knew who he was. Rabbi Nachman felt the need to broadcast it to the whole world so that there shouldn't be any lack of bechira with regard to a person's decision to connect to the tzaddik or not to connect to the tzaddik. He says, listen, I know what I'm capable of. I know what my teachings are capable of. I know who I am. Ani nahar metayar mikol samim. Now, not because I, right, meaning Rabbi Nachman is uniquely great, but because Hashem is putting different souls into the world at different times. People ask the same question, for example, at the very, very end of the Gemara in Saita, where they're going through different things that were missing when different tzaddikim had left the world. So there's a very famous teaching right at the end of the Gemara in Saita where Rabbi Yosef says, Al tisnei anava, don't say that when, it was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai or somebody left the world, that humility left the world, because because I'm still here. Right? Now, there's no more counter-intuitive statement than that, right? It's like, don't say humility's gone because I'm here, guys, you know. Or Hillel, for example, Imanikan hakolkan. What is this? So again, it's not a new tradition. It's not a new tradition. And it's only understandable, and it's something that people really struggle with, especially about Rabbi Nachman, because it looks like the most arrogant stuff in the world. You have to know who you're dealing with and what his self-perception was. If you're dealing with bittul, you understand this is not a person who is speaking out of self-aggrandizement or delusions of grandeur. This is a person who is so bittul, right, and so emestic, that if this was the emes manifesting in his own neshama, it had nothing to do with him as an individual. This was the light that Hashem was shining down to the world through him. And so he felt the need to
So
be a mispater in that.
Everything is what Hashem gave me to achieve. How can I hinder the gift that Hashem has given?
He can't hold it back. He has to say
it. Against Hashem if I don't shine that light.
That's right. Reb Nosson in Sichas Ran, this is not our sugya tonight, we have a ton to do, but I'm just mentioning a little bit. Reb Nosson in Sichas Ran addresses this very, very, very subtly. And he says that after everything that Rabbi Nachman revealed about himself and spoke about himself and who he was and how great his neshama was and his teachings and so on, he said everything he did was for the purpose of kina soifrim tar b'chachma, right? Which is a mission in Pirkei Avos that says that when there's jealousy among the scribes, like when you see how great another person can become, tar b'chachma, you want to be as great. Rabbi Nachman taught, and this was again and again and again and again and again. Rabbi Nachman taught everybody, don't think that I'm great because I was born with a holy soul, because I was the great-grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, and my father was a tzaddik, and his father was a tzaddik, and his father was a tzaddik. No. He said, everything that I gained and the levels that he reached, again, these are not claims. You can open up any of his svarim, and you see this person was not from this world, not regular in any way. He says, I got it because I worked, and everybody can get there. Rabbi Nachman said again and again to all of his chassidim, if you follow my path, you'll become tzaddikim kamoini mamish. He said, mamish on my level. Like, there's nothing special about me. I just worked really hard. So when you put these two things together, and then this person's revealing the levels that he reached, it's like, wow, maybe I can also get there. I mean, this is what a Jew can strive toward. So it puts it in a different framework. Yeah. There you go. And what did he say about himself? That he's the honor of Mikal Adam. Who wrote that line in the Chumash? Moshe. It's a huge maila. But what does anivus mean? Not to make that a person's low. Anivus means that a person is so plugged into the truth that their mailas don't come from them, that adarabah, it's the greatest anivus in as much as it's really coming from that place for a person to declare who they are. But it's not coming from the standpoint of a person feeling greater than. Again, the tzaddik is a portal, but they have to reveal to the world, the emes. So Moshe Rabbeinu writes about himself, Ish Moshe Adam mi'ad mikol Adam. Thank you for that source. It's exactly this point. Yeah, I'd like to move on. Yeah.
Essentially forcing Mashiach, right?
Not forcing, trying to channel the energy of Mashiach into the world.
This has happened before in other generations when they try to kind of bring people together to...
Yeah, this is a tradition and a huge machlokes as to whether this should be done, this shouldn't be done.
Right.
Okay, fine. Let's finish this last line here. So this is what we're doing, that ultimately we should also achieve the truth. That we should eventually come to believe in Chidush Ha'olam, like we said last week, that's the essence of faith. Two people could believe the same things about reality, but there's one tiny difference. Was the world created by a conscious creator or not? And that's really what it comes down to. That's why Rav Nosson says we call these days that are all about faith, Chanukah. Because Chanukah connotes Chanukas, right? The inauguration of what? So of course, it's talking about the inauguration of the Beis Hamikdash, right? Or the inauguration of the third Beis Hamikdash deeper. But in the deepest sense, it's talking about the inauguration of the world, creation. Because that's the essence of our faith. And that's why Shabbos is, like we said, in the realm of time, what the tzaddik is in the realm of the human, and what the Beis Hamikdash is in the realm of space. Because Shabbos is Chidush Ha'olam, right? Shabbos means, why do we rest on Shabbos? I had this conversation with my 3-year-old daughter on Shabbos, right? And I asked her why that Haba doesn't go to work on Shabbos, because she said, because it's Shabbos, which is of course true. And then I said, good, but why on Shabbos don't we go to work? We have to know, because Hashem created the world in 6 days, and He didn't work on 7 days. And so Shabbos is the testimony, Zeichel L'Maaseh Bereishis, and that's Chanukah's. That's it. This is encapsulated in the greatness and in the persona of Yosef HaTzadik, who is the aspect of the true tzaddik in every generation. Okay, this is the perfect segue now into the next bit, which I'm so happy. I really don't think we're going to get through. You know what? Again, I shouldn't sell ourselves short. We're going to make a push. We're going to try our best. If the rebels could take over the whole Syria, we could try to take over, this booklet a little bit. With Hashem's help, we'll push and push and push.
We could add a couple of shiurim too.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll discuss what's going to be after Chanukah. But I think at this point, we've had a taste now of Likutei Halachos. Yeah, a little bit, the Mahalach, the way the things are presented, one idea, and then how the various halachos relating to a topic are basically vessels for different facets of this Gilui, each one adding its own thing, but they all come together in this tapestry. And then it's like, wow, okay, Chanukah means something completely different than I thought it was, because I thought it was, at worst, latkes and dreidels and parties. At best, it was the commemoration of a miracle, which is good. But all of a sudden, it's like, wait, this is super relevant. This is incredibly relevant. Like, I have to be different coming out of Chanukah than I was going into it, because now I have the light of the tzaddik in my home, in my house, in my heart. I know what it means to be mechapes the tzaddik. I know what it means not to use the tzaddik, and that's what Chanukah is. Unbelievable. And that's just a tiny taste of Likutei Halachos in general and Rebbe Nassan's approach to Chanukah in particular. Yeah.
Just talking about Pashas Vayetze Miketz, dreams, I thought straight away the first line, I have a dream. But it's interesting that the Lubavitch, I don't remember where the Rebbe talks about, one of the first times he spoke as a leader, he said, from a young age, I have this dream about the Beis Hamikdash and everything. And he says, from a young age, I already had this dream. And he's almost already saying, this is what we have to imagine. That's what we have to work towards to make this dream a reality.
Amazing. Amazing. Oh, yeah, amazing. I mean, the Lubavitch Rebbe was a visionary. He was a dreamer. I'm a dreamer, But he didn't stop dream. He made it happen. He made it happen. That's what it means to really dream. Because you could dream stam, it's not much of a dream, it's a shtus. But if you dream and you believe in it, it can make anything happen. There's a very big yid, I'm not going to get into this now, just briefly mention it, who I consider to be a primary influence in my life. A major influence in my life, on my thought. He was murdered in the Warsaw Ghetto, in Talus and Tefillin, holding a copy of the Zohar Kadosh. And his name was Rav Hillel Zeitlin. Hashem yikun damai. Not going to go into his whole story now. Fascinating life story, journey. And his writings are fresh. They're fresh. They're like a fresh bakery, like fresh, like they could have been written this morning. And he knew, he really, really knew. He knew what Yiddishkeit needed, what Am Yisrael needed. He mamish, he had a certain Ruach HaKodesh about him. A certain Ruach HaKodesh. He absolutely knew that the Holocaust was coming. I mean, he wrote about it absolutely, fully, clearly. He had an opportunity to escape, and he chose to stay with his people in Poland. And he was a mamish, a yid, who had a heart that was the heart of all of Am Yisrael. He was a dreamer. And among his remarkable writings, of which there are many volumes that actually keep on coming out, because he wrote in Yiddish, and he edited a very interesting Yiddish paper, because he had one foot in the Haskalah in a certain sense and one foot in Hasidus. He grew up in actually a Chabad family, interestingly enough, a very prestigious Chabad family. And then at a young age he left and he joined the Haskalah, and he went to Berlin and he spent a good few years away, but his neshama was a neshama of every kind of poet and seeker and real, like a spiritual, a real neshama, real neshama. And then after the First World War, having seen what he saw, having learned what he learned, he came right back. He came right back, and he mamish became fully committed again. And he was just always in this liminal space, like he was neither here nor there. He wasn't fully integrated back yet into what he perceived to be a complete corruption and distortion of what Hasidus actually meant to be. I sent Rabbi Aiden some of his little snippets of his writings, but he certainly wasn't a maskil. He certainly wasn't connected to the secularists. But he was somewhere in the middle. And so he wrote and wrote his whole life. He wrote the most remarkable writings, all in Yiddish, and now they're being translated into Hebrew, and they're publishing them volume after volume. But among his writings, you find a collection of diary entries that was published under the title Al Gvul Shnei Olamot. This was during World War I, as he saw as the transition period between like the world before the war and the world after the war, but he was also writing out of the place of, in his own life, Al Gvul Shnei Olamot. Like he was sort of coming back in a remarkable way. And it's absolutely tremendous. I mean, we should go through them really one day. Maybe I was thinking very much I would love to give over his teachings. Rav Hillel's teachings are like so crucial for today, and no one knows about them.
Why are you mentioning it now?
I'm mentioning it now because the thing that features most prominently in that small diary, Al Gvul Shnei Olamot, are his dreams. And he speaks about his dreams. And he speaks about this wild stuff. Like, for example, one entry, how all of a sudden he sees the Netziv of Elazhin, who he never met before. He had no idea what he looks like. Or maybe, no, it was shown to him, or said in the name of the Netziv, a certain pirish on a pasuk in Devarim. And he has this dream, and he remembered it, he wrote it down, he took his dreams very, very seriously. And years later, he happened to come across a copy of Emek Davar, which wasn't even in print at that time. It was very, very expensive, and he happened to be in somebody's library, and the first thing he did was look up his shot on that pasuk of Mamish. It was exactly what he said. And this is one example, but he had all these visionary dreams. So I'm saying there are dreamers among us. You know, there are people who have a cleansed koyach hamadame, and they can see things. They can really see things. They're dreamers. Okay, let's. Yeah.
You can see it in here. You can hold it in your hand.
Yeah.
If you can see it.
That's it. If you can envision it, soif masa begins b'machshava tchila, and machshava tchila begins in a dream. I posted on Facebook last week. If you think you won't, if you think you can't, then you won't. if you think you can, then you might. And that's it. If you think you can't, then you absolutely won't. There's no question. Ein sikui, because you just won't. Not because you can't. It'll become what they call a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the Indian of Nevuah. But if a person dreams, and what else are we in this world to do but dream? We're a nation of dreamers. Af al pi sheyisma mea im kol zeh achak aloi. That means that we're a nation of dreamers. Avda tikvaseinu, right? There you go.
So if you think you can, or if you think you can't.
You're right. Either. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. With Hashem's help, let's segue now into Hilchas Hashkamas HaBoker Dalid. This is one of my favorite pieces. I haven't seen all of Likutei Halachos, but hands down. I mean, this teaching, which I've given over before, is mamish something heavenly, something really heavenly, something miraculous. See, he jumps into it again. We're coming into in the middle of a very, very, very long drasha, just the part that's focused on Chanukah. And he says, this is the depth of the miracle of Chanukah. Malchus Yavan stood against us to challenge our faith. Again, that was unique about the challenge of Yavan, is that it wasn't trying to wipe us out physically or enslave us. They were coming for our emunah. They were coming for our Torah. They were coming for our connection to Hashem. The main thing of Yava and Yaftalikim Liyefes was the external appearance of intellect, the external facade of wisdom that goes against our emunah. That was their main thing. They wanted to destroy faith. They wanted to speak in the name of progressivism, and moving beyond and letting go of this archaic, old, naive way of looking at the world. They wanted to stamp out our interpretation of this chalom that enables us to find Hashem everywhere and stand firmly with our conviction that the world was created. This was their main thing. This is the main thing of the wicked. Because this world, which is the world of the Chalom, is the world of Malchus. And Malchus is the Levana, is the moon that has no light of its own. It has however much light we are willing to channel to it. And that's why we have two iterations of the moon. There's the moon that you can see, and there's the full moon, that's Malchus to Kedusha, and that's why so many of our Chagim, we were speaking about this at Yom Tovim, around the 15th of the month, right? That's Siyar B'Shlei Musa, that's when the moon is full, and that's called, in the Svarim, Malchus de Kedusha. That's called the world that's lit up, and it's all up to us, because the world is just the world. It's up to us to choose how we want to interpret it. But then there's also a Levana that's, you can't even see it. You cannot even see it. And that's called Malchus de Sitra Achra. That's the other Malchus. Am Yisrael are all about Malchus de Kedusha. That's why we're in this world. We want to conquer the world for Hashem. Kila Hashem hamalucha u'moishel b'goyim. Right? We want that the whole world, not that we should rule the world, the Jews should rule the world, but there is something to this that the world says the Jews run the world. Because that means that there's something latent in our potential that has what to do with controlling the world. But what they don't get is that fundamentally, it's not supposed to be the Jews control the world, because there should not be anything called the Jew in the same model of what there should not be anything called the tzaddik. It's just Hashem. We want to give up the Malucha to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki Hashem HaMalucha, not for us. We want to conquer the world for Hashem. And then it should mamish be Ratzon Hashem, not because any of us want power, but because we want that the world should wake up and recognize Av Echad L'Kulana. We're one big family. We should stop killing each other. Be'ezus Hashem, the world is getting closer and closer to that time. This is what we daven for every day. This is what we hope for. Right? Now, naturally, if this is what Am Yisrael are supposed to reveal in the world, which is a Malchus to Kedusha, who's going to come against us? Not just random forces with bulldozers. It's gonna be a Malchus that's gonna come after us. Malchus disitra achra. That's why we say Kisha'amda aleim Malchus Yavan, Malchus Harisha. Right? We refer to it as a Malchus because it's coming to counter our potential elevation of this world by revealing the Araganas. They want to come and stamp it out. And this is the four Malchios whose dominion. Under whose dominion we're in exile, right? Rome, Bavel, right? Romi, Bavel, Yavan, and Madai, right?
Bilam was their side. We have and they
B'diuk.
have.
It's always Zelu Umazeh. That's right. So it comes to challenge our Malchus. Shezei Gabers Malchus Harasha, Shebechinas Arba Malchuyas al Malchus to Kedusha. They're coming for our Malchus to Kedusha, which Malchus is always Emunah, and our ability to see the world in a deeper way. It was a tremendous pain. They wanted to make us forget our way of looking at the world through the lenses of Torah, the lenses of Emunah. By pulling us into their narrative, which doesn't see any coherence to the world, and the world is just the world. The world is eternal, and no one created it, and it's just, this is how it is. Chas v'shalom. Torah and mitzvahs are all vessels to enable us to encounter the divine. That's why David HaMelech says in Tehillim, V'chol mitzvaysecha, what is the purpose of all of your mitzvahs? Is emunah. V'chol mitzvaysecha emunah. It's a pasuk in Tehillim. Or like the Gemara Makkas, other places, Bach Habakkuk, Ve'amidan al achas, came along Habakkuk, he said if you had to distill the whole Judaism down to one principle, it's tzaddik, so my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, Reb Shmelka Selisher, is a Talmud of the Chassam Sofer, Talmud Chavar of the Ksav Sofer. So Reb Shmelka Selisher writes in his Sefer Tzar HaChaim, in the collected drushes, which is the only part of the Sefer that any of us could understand, because the rest is like on Sugis HaShas, and you have to know the whole thing inside out to even begin. I tried learning it with my Rebbe in the mirror. He said it was giving him a headache. He said, "Man, this is beyond him." So it's not learned in the yeshivas because it's beyond intense. But they put some, derech drash, in the back of the Sefer, so that's the part of the Sefer we can learn. See, he says over there, how he interprets this? Mamash a Breslover Taich. He said, and it's mamash what we're learning here. Ba Habakkuk ve'amidan al achas. He says, what Habakkuk sums the whole Judaism down to? The tzaddik. That's the tzaddik. Be'emunasai, if you'll believe in the tzaddik, yichya, then you'll be able to live. Because if you're not connected to a tzaddikim, ain't sikui, no chance. That's how a Litvish, it's not Litvish, but a Hungarian, Gadol, Mamash Gadol B'Yisrael, Baruch Hashem interpreted this. So, I feel like it's Mamash my Messiah, tzaddik. But tzaddik. But what did Habakkuk mean, at least on the surface? Emunah, emunah, emunah. It all comes down to emunah, which is, by the way, what my grandfather meant, in the tzaddik, because it's the same thing. But emunah yichya, because if you believe in the tzaddik and you'll receive healing from him, so then you'll live. You'll live in a world that's full of life. Yichya. Not like Esav, last week's parsha. Lamos, like everywhere Esav goes, he's dying, And Yaakov Avinu loimes. Yaakov Avinu is full of life forever and ever and ever, because he's full of hope. He's full of vision and full of idealism and full of dreams, full of dreams. So that's what the Torah and mitzvahs are for, is to help us to encounter Hashem throughout our lives. They wanted to make us forget this. By overpowering us with the opposite kind of wisdom. The wisdom of what's called the klipa, right? The negative contrast. Which is the concept of this impure malchus. This impure malchus, shal arba malchuyas, of these four wicked dominions, which is our exile. That instead of enabling us to connect to Chachmei Ilah, to a higher way of approaching the world, of interpreting current events, of seeing life, they want us to just see things through the lens of science and just rationalism, and you can lose it. You can mamish lose it. And what you lose is not faith. Chas v'shalom, a person loses hope. A person goes through tough times in their life. If it's not connected and bursting with infinite meaning, guided by a being who absolutely loves us unconditionally, there's no chance. There's no chance. How could people carry on? And they don't. People don't carry on. And we're dealing with this mental health crisis, nebuch. Because there's no faith. And if faith is lost, then hope is lost. And if hope is lost, then all you have is despair. All you have is despair. K'may achshav, he says, and that's what's happening today, says Rav Nosson Baba Niseinu Arabim. Shem eskaber me'epikarsim, v'roitzim lahamshech chachmas chitzonius ba'olam, l'ashkiach haTorah legamri. They want to stay Jews, cultural Jews, but they want to let go of the Torah. And what is a Jew if not that? So then we lost. Because the whole thing is that we're supposed to hold on to an elevated way of looking at the world. If you want to stay Jewish, but because of this worldly cheshbon of being accepted by the nations of the world so they stop murdering you, you let go of everything that actually made you Jewish, and you're still Jewish in ethnicity, but then you're matriculated into all their universities, etc., which is what the Haskalah wanted. So then with what are you Jewish? So then what are you going to do? Says Rav Nosson, they're stealing our children away. We see this. Very quickly, a person leaves the yoke, and then again, you have to see this in the the context of Rav Nosson, but this was like the next worst thing. They even cut their beards. And their pays. And then before you know it, they're drinking yayin nesach. And it's a downward spiral. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu always gives them the remedy before the malady, always gives us the cure. It's epikarsis itself to say that what are we going to do? We don't have the answer. Nebuch, we're lost. We're not lost. If you're running through a challenge, whether in your personal life or in the life of the klal or in the life of the universe, guaranteed the remedy is already in the world. The question is whether we're using it. But the remedy is there. The pieces of the puzzle came with the box. The question is whether you can put them together. But the pieces of the puzzle are there. That tzaddikim were projecting to us what the image is supposed to look like so that we have any chance of even putting this thing together. But we have what it takes. We have what it takes. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he says, gave us the cure to this malady, to this illness. And that cure is called Chanukah. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu did this incredible miracle in the days of Matisyahu ben Yochanan and Kohen Gadol. And it's mamash in Yana Diyayma. We're talking today about a Mapala Gedola. You have any idea what this means? We're living through historic times of epic messianic proportion. In 11 days, a bunch of chevra with turbans on their heads, I'm not making this up, but took over an entire country in 11 days, city by city by city by city. The Mapala Gedola. This is what happened with Yavan, or at least the forces that were coming against us. Right? It's just Syrian Greek forces that were coming after Am Yisrael at that time. Mapala Gedola. So that's a nace alone, right? Rabim biad ma'atim, tmei biad tahirim, risham biad oskidar secha. So again, today we can only say about these people as much as we can understand that it's tmei biad tmeim, and risham biad risham, and zaydim biad zaydim, and so on. So hopefully we hope that Hashem will bring tshuva into everybody's heart, and people will wake up and stop killing people. That's our hope. That's our hope. And who knows what's going to be now with Syria and Eretz Yisrael, and there should be peace. That's what we want to see. We want to see peace. And we want to see the eradication of extremism on all sides, right? But that's what happened there. Af gam al yedei toikav anes, but he says really the essence of this was himshichu ar nifla ba'olam l'dayros. They brought down the light of Chanukah for Am Yisrael throughout exile in every single era. Shilanu koyach ha'yedei zel hamshich ar hanal kol echad bebeisai, and it's so personal. You don't have to travel here or travel there. It comes to you in your dining room. You understand? It comes to you in your home. The light of the Beis Hamikdash, which we're going to learn a lot about now in the next few weeks. Dainu ar asagas elikuz ayidei atzimtzum emanizkar la'el. They brought down this light into vessels. Over here he's commenting on a teaching of the Likutei Moharan that we have not seen. It's Torah Lamed. So again, we're sort of like we're it's a bit unfair. We're jumping into the middle of a teaching of Likutei Halachos, and we haven't seen the teaching of Likutei Moharan that he's commenting on. So it's just be aware, like, how much we're lacking here. But there's still value. So he summarizes over here just this point that Rabbi Nachman makes. Shekol ma sha'achoyle gadol biyoser. This is a very important principle in Kisvei Breslov, that the sicker the patient, hu tzarich Rebbe gadol biyoser. You need the greatest doctor. So over here, he doesn't even use the mashal and the nimshal. Like, it doesn't say the sicker the patient, the greater the doctor. He just goes straight to the Rebbe, because that's what the Rebbe is. The sicker the patient, and he's speaking about in spiritual terms, you need the greatest Rebbe. Shiye uman v'chacham kazeh, who could be an uman, right? Uman means a craftsman. And a chacham kazeh, sheyuchal lasis tzimtzumim niflaim, who knows, like Rabbi Nachman speaks about over there in that Torah Lamed, how to make incredible kelim, incredible vessels, what's called tzimtzumim, to constrict the loftiest ideas down into simple, practical eitzes. Milanu gadol Rabbi Nachman, who gave eitzes that every person could be mekayim. His spodidus, doesn't matter what level you're on. Talk to God in your own words. He gave practical, simple guidance. His stories that are the deepest Kabbalah, that a person doesn't need to know the Kabbalah. Just read the story and it goes into your neshama. So he was speaking very much about himself. That's obvious to anybody who knows Breslov a little bit. He's speaking about Rabbi Nachman here, but it's true about many tzaddikim who can make it simsumim neflaim sheyair gam boy hasagas halikos. That the greatest doctor is able to heal the sickest patient. The greatest floodlight is able to illuminate the bottom of the pit, to shine the light of emunah into the life of even a person who's very, very distant. This light is coming into our lives, and that's why it's very connected to what Reb Nosson says in that other teaching. It's the same mechaber, right? So it's the same approach. We're going to see this across a few teachings with Hashem's help. We're going to wrap it up in 2 minutes. That we're drawing this light, the greatest light, that's able to come down to the lowest place on Chanukah through the tzaddikim hamuflagim b'mayla shetiknu lahadlik ner Chanukah. They were the ones that instituted. It's a chag derabanan, means it's a chag that's filled with the energy of the rabbis, right? The tzaddikim. It's a tzaddik yantiv. It's not min haTorah. It's all the tzaddikim. Shal yedei yesh koyach lahamshich b'chinas ha'ara hanala kol echad bebeisai, where every person in your bias, meaning in your current circumstances, right? Not even having cleaned the dining room because a guest is coming. Just the way that your dining room looks. You know how your dining room looks. I know how my dining room looks. We know. It's just, Hashem comes to visit your house. All the toys are all strewn across the floor, and, stuff is everywhere, and, whatever it is. The tzaddikim bring Hashem's light even into that. Listen to these words. Afilu imhu k'moishehu. Even if you are as you are. In Breslov, you come as you are. There's no prerequisite. You show up with all your stuff. Afilu mukamayishu, no matter what you're dealing with in life. And Reb Nosson, quoting Rabbi Nachman, says elsewhere that when he speaks about these kinds of terminologies, like even no matter who, no matter what, he says, surely the person reading this thinks, oh, he means everybody, but not me though. Rabbi Nachman's like, I want to clarify. I mean everyone. Right? And in other terminologies, he says that even a person who falls into sha'ol tachtis, falls into hell, umitachtav, and even under hell. No matter what. Right? They used to say the internet is in Yiddish, unter means under. So there are people who are caught in the net. It's just one thing. The internet is like the undernet. It's like inter. It's like you could fall even under the net. You can gamish be like shal tachtis umitachtav. Afilu mukamayishu. And this is what's brought by the Arizal as it relates to Chanukah. In Chanukah, that the light of Chanukah is shemamshicham ara nifla. You're drawing down the most illuminated spiritual revelations. Shekol kol hayichudim, which include all of the yichudim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Without getting into it, it's unbelievable yichudim. Nun, ches, lamed, nachal, and all the different gematrias of that. Shemamshichan isai. Limata. The light of Chanukah is to draw the greatest spiritual illumination down. Because the halacha says that ideally your menorah should be lit under 10 tefachim, like really toward the ground. And this was the light of the tzaddikim, the light of emunah. To whom were they bringing the emunah? To you, to me, to everyone. In your house, in your home, deep underground. We'll read just one more line. Actually, we won't. Be'ezras Hashem, we will carry on next week from here, from the words Ki B'Shabbos, the very top of the line, page, but you see how it's a progression. So he's building on the ideas that we learned earlier about the concept of Chanukah and its relationship to the tzaddik, to the life of Emunah, and understanding what a tzaddik is and connecting to the light of the tzaddik, which we're already doing and learning these teachings in the first place. Let's open it up for questions. I know we're just a few minutes already over time, started a bit late also, but if anybody is interested in staying and asking, the floor is henceforth open. Go for it. Clear? We're good? Yeah.
The brothers, with Yosef Asadik, they locked in Balachalonas, right? So what did they get wrong? What did they misunderstand? They saw what it said.
It's a huge sugya. It's a huge sugya. From the standpoint of Rabbi Nachman's teachings in Sichas Sarad in many places and other places in his writings about the concept of machlokes shebein tzaddikim, about the battles that always existed, right, in the discord between tzaddikim, is that sometimes actually, thank you so much for coming, sometimes the tzaddikim that are arguing against true tzaddikim, you think about the Baal Shem Tov, the opposition he faced, the Ramchal today, everybody knows Ramchal was a huge tzaddik. The Arizal had his opposition, so Rabbi Nachman says, it's possible that either consciously or at least subconsciously, they were actually doing a tremendous benefit to the tzaddik. Because anytime that there's a new light that's coming into the world, the Satan's not having it. And the Satan could bring into that person's life, which he ultimately did in a certain sense in the life of all these tzaddikim that we mentioned who died very young, suffered greatly, but ultimately they accomplished what they set out to accomplish. So it's as if other tzaddikim take on the responsibility of making their life as miserable as they can, right? If only on the surface, so that the Satan sees, okay, he has opposition in this world. That's ki'ilu enough. That was one way that Rabbi Nachman was able to interpret how it's possible that other holy Jews could be fighting with him. But there are many, many, many layers of it. We'll get to you in a second. There are many, many layers, and we're going to see in this very teaching what was that machlokes about. It was a difference in opinion. Ultimately, Rav Nassim is going to say that the machlokes Yosef and the Shvatim, without giving too much away, is the machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And what those two energies represent. Both are holy. Hashem needs both. There's got to always be a push and pull. It's a system of balances. Chesed, Gvura, and then Tiferes. You always need two sides to push and pull, and then you come to a resolution. So these ideas are way beyond us. Nobody can understand this idea of machlokes bein tzaddikim. But ultimately you found this pattern throughout Jewish history. You had tzaddikim who were dreamers, and the other tzaddikim who thought they were dangerous because they were either naive or because they were trying to push too much too fast, etc. And I'll just throw in the context very, very quick. The main detractor of Rabbi Nachman was the Shpala Zayda. The Shpala Zayda was at that time, he was called the Zayda because he was the eldest Hasidic master of the generation. He was still remaining from the time really of the Talmidei Baal Shem. So he spanned the first two generations. Remember, their lifespans were very short. So the Baal Shem Tov had children very young, so it's not like today. Meaning he was of the Talmidei Baal Shem, and he was the undisputed, leader of the nascent, still early and growing Hasidic movement. And he was fire against Rabbi Nachman, even though they had a very good relationship at first. And on a level of Olam Hazeh, if you know a little bit of the history, you can explain. It was all Lashon Hara, it was slander. There was a certain chazan who got up to daven, and Rabbi Nachman was not happy with the way that he was davening. Rabbi Nachman said that he's just davening to impress his wife and the woman in Ezras Nashim. He got up to daven in the shul, and Rabbi Nachman took away his voice. And he couldn't make a sound, and the chazan was incredibly embarrassed. He ran to the Shpal Zayda and made up a whole bunch of stuff about the Rebbe. And so that's on Olam Hazeh. A level deeper, it's reported that the Shpal Zayda sent a message to Rabbi Nachman with one of Rabbi Nachman's Hasidim, who he happened to bump into, and he said, "Tell your Rebbe that I love him very much, but he came to the world 200 years too early." This is what we have a tradition already from 200 years ago, and that 200 years later is us. That's us. So he felt Rabbi Nachman's a big light. But maybe it wasn't the time. People didn't have the vessels. Rabbi Nachman is reported to have sent back the message, go tell the Shpala Zayda that we love him very much, but the reason they call him Zayda is because he came to the world 200 years too late. Okay. So again, that much could be they made up. They could be, all of it's made up. Ani lo yodea. That's what they say. But this was the push and pull. So we're dealing here again with great tzaddikim on both sides, beyond my pay grade, beyond our pay grade. But ultimately, we're going to learn that this has been going on throughout history. And every neshama needs to find the tzaddikim that they feel drawn to, that they feel not just draws them, but draws them to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Should be zeicha to seek the tzaddik and to find the tzaddik. B'ezras Hashem. Okay, Ashreinu, Rabbi Aiden, you wanted to say something?
They basically said, like Yosef, that they always struggle to see, there's always that beginning of Yosef, that you struggle to see the beauty. It's hidden beauty.
Hidden. It's araganas. Yeah.
It's aragana, very good. And that even when they were when he reveals that he's Yosef, right? They didn't even recognize it was Yosef. How can brothers...
Like even then they couldn't.
Yeah, how can brothers not recognize each other? It's not like he wore a mask and he went, by the way, Ani Yosef. He just went, Ani Yosef. They're like, oh wow, it's Yosef. But before, they couldn't even see to his face that it was Yosef. So there's something to it.
Amazing, Yidden. What a privilege. Like, what a privilege to learn these teachings. What a privilege. Should this not be learned by every single person in Am Yisrael? Don't you think Hanukkah parties would look different? You don't think Hanukkah would look different? Imagine. This is my dream. I'm a little bit of a dreamer also. This is my dream. I dream of Am Yisrael activated, lit up, full of joy, full of faith, full of depth, sensitivity, authenticity. We're getting there. Ashreinu. Ashreinu Ma'atayv Chakenu. Thank you, Yidden. Thank you to everybody in the Zoom for joining. Thank you. Sorry, went a bit over time.
ואתה האב שלי שכל כך אוהב אותי האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני נושם